You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanders,
Robin Mock,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is...
Thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm super excited to have Matt Dunn on the show with me. He has a fantastic new book. It's called Pug Actually, and what a great addition to your to-be-read pile for this summer. Absolutely. This, if you love lighthearted, stories with great protagonist and a surprise protagonist that you're going to find out in this book. Just a great escape. This is the book for you. This is a must-have this summer. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much, and thank you for such a glowing introduction. I hope the book and the protagonist can live up to that. But it was a bit of a departure for me, but it was a fun one to write, and yes, I hope that readers do enjoy it, despite its difference.
Yeah, I think they really will. But before we get to talking about all that, Matt, we begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
That's an interesting one from my point of view, because it was actually back at school. I was about 12 years old. And every week what happened was we had our big school assembly, and somebody was tasked, and by tasked I mean picked on by one of the teachers to go ahead and write a report about the previous week's game of football or hockey or rugby, whatever it had been. Now, typically what happened was with 12-year-old boys, these were kind of very dull affairs where, they'd stand up there and they'd say, okay, well, they scored, then we scored, then they scored again, and we lost. And it was that kind of thing. And you had to stand up and read the whole thing in front of assembly. And I thought to myself, when it came to my turn to do this, I thought, I'll put a couple of jokes in. And so I did. And I stood up in front of the whole school and I read this thing out and I got a laugh. And I remember at that precise moment thinking, hey, this isn't a bad thing to do, to write things that make people laugh, and, words that you put down on paper can hopefully entertain other people. And that was really it. And it was that was the kind of the motivator for me to go ahead and do that. It took about another 18 years before I would actually sit down and do that for real. But I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten the feeling that gave me, and it's something that I try and reproduce every time I sit down and put fingers to keyboard.
Boy, chasing that the high that you get from making someone laugh, there have been lifetimes spent on chasing that feeling again. That's such an indelible moment that you can absolutely put your finger on when you first discover you can do that.
I guess it's a bit strange as well, because as a writer, you rarely hear people laugh at what you've done, because most of the time the book is read when you're not there. In fact, I'm with a lot of writer friends of mine. I've never actually seen anybody reading one of my books in public, or managed to come across that. I guess it's harder now to spot because so many people are reading on devices like Kindles. But it's you obviously get feedback and you get reviews and people telling you how much they've enjoyed it, which is fantastic. But and do the odd reading at a book event, of course, when you actually get that. But no, it's something that I aim for, and I hope I achieve. And I define myself as a comedy novelist, and hopefully I don't let readers down.
So Matt, you said that it took you 18 years, I think you said, to realize that dream. I find it interesting that in the pursuit of the artistic expression and finding a way to make a living at it, a lot of us get sidetracked by starting families and having to work jobs and pay bills and all of that sort of thing. What career did you pursue before writing?
it was exactly that. It was a case of having to go out and earn a living, and you get caught up with that and you enjoy that. And I've loved the jobs I've done. I was an athlete as a kid, so I did a sports science degree at university, and then that kind of took me into the health and fitness sphere. So I worked for a number of years in health clubs, leisure centres, gyms, that kind of thing, and really enjoyed it. And little did I know that I was gathering material all the way through, and then through a couple of other twists and turns career-wise, I found myself at age 30 having a bit of spare time, and it was ironic because, like I said, I'd known that I could write, that I wanted to write. And I'd always known that I could turn a sentence. I knew that I had a way with putting words together that made sense. But I didn't really know what I wanted to write, Hank. It was a bit strange for me, thinking, yes, I can do this, and I can write a press release for work, or I can write an advertising slogan, and that worked well. But I didn't really know what literature, kind of literature would work for me, until I was on a skiing holiday one day, and a friend gave me this book, and he said, "Oh, you must read this. I think you'll love it." And it was High Fidelity by Nick Hornby.
Oh, yeah.
And it was an epiphany for me. I read it and I just thought, wow, this is the kind of book I want to write. It's in the space I like reading about. It's so funny. It's so beautifully written. It's about people I know. And I've been trying to do that ever since, basically 14 books later. And each time I sit down and write a new novel, I make sure I read through High Fidelity at least once, because for me, it just represents the pinnacle of excellence in what it is I do. And it was very much that moment that then made me think, okay, I'm going to start thinking about my life and the people around me and what's going on, and try and put it into words. And when I found myself with a bit of time, which was funnily enough, when 9/11 happened. I worked as a headhunter in the IT industry, helping to bring .com companies over from the US to the UK, would you believe? And when 9/11 happened, they stopped coming for a while, which meant that I had my own business. It meant that kind of dried up, and I had some time, and I just thought, okay, well, it's kind of now or never for me. And my girlfriend at the time had said to me, well, I know you've always wanted to do this. You write a chapter or two of this book you tell me you've got an idea for. Give it to me to read. If I think it's any good, then we can do it. So dependent on the permission of this lovely lady who is now fortunately my wife. And I wrote it. She read it. She said, "Yep, give it a go." And that was the start for me.
Isn't it curious, Matt, that writing is one of the very few pursuits that I know of that I've had conversations with people, and they tell stories similar to yours, that you knew you were a writer, you knew you were a storyteller, even when you hadn't written anything yet, and you just needed to understand where you fit in, what the vein of the types of stories that you would tell for that to come to fruition. But before you discovered High Fidelity, that thing was still in you. You just didn't know what form it would take yet. That's something very interesting about writing, that I find, that it's not necessarily bound up in the thing that you write for you to be a storyteller, if that makes sense at all.
No, absolutely. And I hear so many writers say to me that they kept diaries, they were always writing, they had 6 or 7 novels in their drawers before they'd reached the age of 18. That wasn't me. I didn't do that. I didn't have that. I wasn't very much that. What was the Kevin Costner film, Field of Dreams, is it, where he says, if you build it, they will come?
Right.
I didn't believe in that. I didn't know I had anything to build and that anybody would come anyway. So for me, it was very much a case of, no, I found something that inspired me, that made me think, yes, there might be a market for the kind of thing that I had a potential idea for. And it was, and that was the catalyst. And I've never yet met Nick to thank him in person, but if he's listening in, Nick, thank you very much. It's your fault, my career.
I love that. That first book that you began writing that built your confidence, did that book get published?
It did. I went through the. I have to admit a horrible story. I was, as I said, I had some time off from work, and again, like lots of friends of mine, when they wrote their first novel, they were sitting upstairs in a drafty garret with fingerless gloves, not affording while they typed away. I had a friend who basically said, "Oh, I've got this villa in the south of Spain. If you want to go and spend a few months there over Christmas, you can go and do it and write your book there." So I basically, wrote the book in 30-degree heat in a villa in Malaga, taking a dip in the pool when the work got a bit too much for me. And it did, sent it off to agents as as everybody does. Got rejection after rejection. But the interesting thing was that every fourth or fifth rejection, and I think I had 31 in total, every fourth or fifth would be a little snippet of information or a little hint, about, you get some that say, "Oh yeah, I love the plot, but the characters didn't work." And then you get another one that says, "Oh, I love the characters, but the plot didn't work." So you have to kind of sift through all of that. Sure. But there was one of them I remember said to me, "Read the bestsellers in your genre and see how they achieve their page-turning quality." And I basically went away, did that, and then, rewrote the book with that in mind. And then agent number 32 said, "Yes, I like it. I think I can sell it. I'll take you on." So yeah, I managed to sell that first book. I got a very nice 2-book deal with Simon & Schuster in the UK, and that was the start for me.
Looking for a tool to help you visualize your story before the drafting begins? Plotpins is cloud-based and optimized for any device. There's nothing to download. From the new writer who isn't sure how to tell their story to the veteran who can increase their productivity dramatically, we've had experienced writers lay out a detailed structure for several novels in a series in a matter of a few days. The app takes you through 4 steps of the process: the concept or log line. Make sure you have a solid concept that you can keep coming back to throughout the process. The outline, 12 beats and 3 acts, each has a description of what should be happening with examples. The board, 40 cards. We take the 12 beats and add sub-beats to those, breaking it down even further and being very specific about what should go into each. These also have examples and descriptions. Right. We take those 40 cards and turn them into a to-do list. For a 50,000-word book, it's about 2 cards per chapter roughly. We have a beautiful editor built into the app. You can export your manuscript to a PDF anytime with the click of a button. Let Plotpins help you visualize your writing project. Use code HANK10 to get 10% off Plotpins. Plotpins.com.
Authors, I have a fantastic new service to tell you about. It's called Pubsite. Pubsite is a service to help you build your very own website, your home on the web, where you can promote your work and give your fans a place to connect with you. Pubsite is a website platform that allows every author, regardless of budget, to have a great-looking professional website developed by the book marketing professionals at FSB Associates. Pubsite is the new, easy-to-use DIY website builder developed specifically for books and authors. Whether you're an author of 1 book or 20, or a small publisher, Pubsite allows you to build, design, and most importantly, update your website pain-free. No need to be dependent on a designer or webmaster to make a small but costly change to your website. Save the money and do it yourself. Pubsite is the best platform for authors because it's a book-centric platform. Pubsite was built just for authors and small publishers. Every design, feature, and layout is book-centric. They have customized designs for you to use. It's easy to build. No coding or HTML is necessary to create a stunning, professional-looking website with all the features you want. Get a custom domain name, yourname.com. It's simple to update. You can add all of your books, add a blog and a book tour, sell from any retailer, manage your email list and social media, and even do e-commerce. Build your website with a 14-day free trial, then pay just $19.99 per month, which includes hosting. And we offer packages starting at $499 to set up the website for you. Pub-site.com, the place to help authors find their home on the web.
Matt, I've talked to, you know, a lot of authors, and a lot of them will have a desk drawer or a trunk or whatever that has one or two or three or 13 in the case of Brandon Sanderson, novels that they had written before they were published. And then a few folks that I've met have that first novel that they wrote, and they keep working on that novel until it becomes publishable. That great advice that you got from the agent, find out what it is in your genre that makes these books, unputdownable, and do that to yours. You took the story and you kept working on it until it became what you needed it to be. What quality do you think it is that that allowed you to keep working on this one book, the debut book, and keep working that story until it became what it needed to be, as opposed to other people who might, when that first book's not successful, just completely scrap it, move on to the next idea until they happen to get the right formula. What was it that kept you working on that book?
I think my short answer is sheer bloody mindedness. I'd gone to the extent of writing 80-something thousand words, and I didn't want to have to write another 80,000 words from scratch.
Sure.
But also, I just think that the interesting thing was I'd read obviously High Fidelity, which I thought was way up there, and there's no way I could achieve that, certainly with the first novel. But I'd also read others in that same space. I'm obviously not going to name them, but I thought, well, I kind of think I can do that, or do a little bit better than that. And if they got published, I can get published. So maybe it was pure. It was a combination of sheer bloody mindedness and naivety. That I just thought, yeah, if I just apply what I'm learning to what I have here, then it has the shape of a novel, and it looks like a novel, and it sounds like a novel. And again, you give it to your friends to read, and your family to read, and you tell them to be honest. And if they say yes, you've got something there, then it really helps. I think obviously the ones that turn around and tell you, no, I think it's rubbish, don't give up your day job. By that time I'd already given up my day job, so it was a little bit late. But yeah, I just think if you and everybody always says, the more you read, the better a writer you are. But I think also the more you read, the more savvy you are of potentially the space you're writing in. And they obviously say you should never write for a market, but it just so happened, I think, that my style and my storytelling and my voice fit this particular niche that had vacancies at the time, or had space for new writers at the time. And again, I think it also helped that I was a man writing romantic comedy, and in the UK there weren't that many of us doing that. There were a lot of women being very successful, but I think publishers thought, okay, maybe there's more of a niche, we can market this because it's a man saying these things, and it's a slightly different point of view, it's the male point of view as opposed to maybe the female one. So I think that all combined. There's obviously a lot of luck involved too, but I think it was a combination of all those things, and not giving up. And that's basically what every single writer I know who's published tells me. It's tenacity, it's not giving up. It's one of the most important things.
Matt, if someone is just discovering you as a writer, how would you describe the types of books that you write?
I'm a romantic comedy novelist. So I write rom-coms, generally told from the male point of view. I do have female characters. Occasionally I try and write as female characters. I hope I get that right. But yeah, it's basically, I started off, thinking, okay, there are probably 6 things that I can write about, as a male author, give my point of view on. And it's friendship and relationships and marriage and having a family and infidelity and there's a 6th one, I can't even remember what my 6th book was now, but those kind of things. And then when I got to book 6, I thought, now I can sort of start looking at other aspects and other bits and pieces. And the fun for me was always that it was being able to perhaps write in a genre that has been well trodden, but tread it with a different pair of shoes on. So yeah, if you like rom-coms, if you're interested in the male point of view, that's me.
Why do you think it is so rare, Matt? Well, it's not so rare anymore, but there was a time that a male perspective in a romantic comedy was almost unheard of. And why do you, if you can answer that, I mean, maybe that's an unanswerable question, but and what do you feel like that you bring to the genre that makes it a better genre? What is it about the male perspective that maybe opens up the genre to more readers and to be better? The more voices we have.
Sure. A difficult question to answer, but I would imagine it's just that. It's just the male point of view. It's just a different way of looking at things. It's just, my experiences. And, like I said, I've written multiple viewpoint novels, Hank, where I have, the first chapter is by the guy, the second chapter is by the girl, and so on and so forth. And, as I write them, I'm aware of just the differences in perception and the differences in, act and execution and all these kind of things that the sexes have. And I think it's literally just a case of that. I see things my way. I happen to be male. Maybe that's something that people might want to read about because it's not as common in the market. But I don't know. Maybe it's my sense of humor. Maybe it's my poor jokes. I don't know. Hard to answer. But I'm glad it works. That's all I can say.
Your new book, Pug Actually, how many books does this make for you now?
This is number 14.
Number 14. What an amazing accomplishment. Is this the first book that has had an interesting protagonist, shall we say?
Are we not if we're not giving the game away, I won't give the game away. It's the most interesting protagonist I've written. And let me tell you, I wrote a book called A Day at the Office about 7 books ago, which was did very well via Amazon. And it was a multi-protagonist, male, female, 6 different protagonists told over the course of one day, where all the stories had to link up and meet at the end. And that was easier to write than this one, because the voice in this one was so unique that I had to stretch deep and dig deep for this particular one. But it was great. It was great fun. I mean, can we tell your listeners what the deal is? Or
absolutely. I was just being coy, but I think it's. I don't think we'll give too much away by giving that.
I mean, fundamentally, Pug Actually is told from the perspective of Doug the pug, who is a rescue pug who.
It's one of the best characters ever, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, who sees his owner Julie in a nightmare relationship with her married boss, and decides that being a rescue works both ways. So he will intervene and find her a boyfriend who is more suitable, whilst splitting her up from the destructive relationship that she's in. So yes, it's told from the point of view of a pug dog, which I hope I get right. The voice I hope I get right anyway.
What made you decide to take this tack with the book? We've seen relationship books like this from the male perspective, from the female perspective, from a third party human perspective. What was the initial idea that said, you know what, I'm going to tell this from a pug's perspective?
There's a bit of a backstory to this. When I was growing up, we had a family dog called Patch, who was a mongrel mix of about 57 different varieties. And he used to have this unique talent whereby whenever my sister used to bring a new boyfriend home, if he didn't like them, he'd find his way and sit underneath their legs as they were kind of sitting stretched out on the sofa and growl up at them softly, just to show his disapproval. And more often than not, Patch turned out to be a much better judge of character than my sister did when it came to these guys. And I looked at this and I thought, it's very interesting. It's you can tell a lot about somebody about how they treat animals, and I think therefore the reverse is true. Animals can tell a lot about a person. And my father died sadly a few years back, and my mum has just gone into a residential home. So I was back in the family home last year clearing it out and sorting out some bits and pieces. And I came across all these photos of, the family. We do a family portrait every year with, the dog sitting in the front. And I remembered these stories about Patch and the kind of things he used to do. And I thought, hey, that's interesting, and you have all these ideas about dogs, being colorblind, which means they'll see these things in black and white, and all these things were kind of formulating somehow. And I thought that would be really interesting to have a relationship comedy told, but from the dog's point of view, because the dog goes everywhere with the owner. The dog sees every aspect. The dog sees a lot of things that the owner won't see, and it kind of just grew into this character who was the all-seeing eye, or all-seeing eyes, albeit from about 18 inches off the ground. And I just thought, I thought I could have some fun with it. And I think as a writer as well, when you've written a few novels, you look to have fun with the ones you're writing. And a good way of doing that is introducing some variety in how you write them. As I said, in previous books, I've set myself the task to make them all work out on the same day, or have multi-protagonists and this kind of thing. And I thought I can have some fun here writing this. And I genuinely believe that if you as a writer have fun writing the book, then your readers are going to have fun reading it. And, as I said, I very much hope that's the case here, because Doug was great fun to write.
Oh, it absolutely is. Matt, as someone who's written quite a bit about human relationships, did writing a book from Doug's perspective give you new insight, or allow you to tell, time-tested stories? We tell stories about human relationships, and we kind of tell the same story over and over, and find new ways of doing it. That's what writers always do. But did taking a new perspective like Doug's perspective, did that open you up in ways that maybe you didn't predict?
That is a very good question, and I think the answer is yes. A lot of my books I write from the first person, and so obviously a lot of the opinions in them, one would argue, are potentially mine. And I remember again listening to Vari McFarlane's podcast with you the other day, and she said, one of her characters was a thinly veiled version of her, and I think that's very true. I think for many novelists, a lot of their characters are thinly veiled versions of them. With Doug, I wasn't able to do that, so I was able to have great fun with him, and allow him to be a bit more outrageous, and the kind of things that he says and does and get involved with were different, and it did make me sit back and think a little bit about why people put up with what they put up with in relationships, and what might make sense to you if you're in the middle of what could be a destructive relationship, or a certain situation, to a completely impartial observer. It wouldn't make any sense at all. And Doug has no problems in calling out these issues, and trying to identify them and trying to make sense of them. And yes, so in doing that, it was actually quite refreshing and interesting for me to think, I haven't thought about that in that way, or yes, that's an interesting viewpoint. And it'll be interesting to find out what readers actually think about that, whether I've got it, or whether it's completely bonkers. It remains to be seen.
One thing I love about it, Matt, is that when the more you write about relationships, you start to look for new ways to describe nuance, to give people the feelings, in varying levels. What's interesting about a character like Doug is Doug lacks all nuance. Things are very black and white to him, and I didn't mean to make a pun about his vision, but it's you don't have any nuance there, and he is of a singular determination, and that makes a fantastically funny story.
Thank you very much. It's probably rare that I can say thank you very much for saying that I've created a character without any nuance. But I absolutely appreciate that. And that was it's fun. It's always more fun to write the more extreme characters.
Yeah.
And Doug is an extreme character, and that's why I had a blast with him.
So after writing this novel, Do you think that you'll write other animal stories in the future, or did this do what you needed for your creative life?
Funnily enough, I've spent the day plotting out potentially Pug Actually 2, which will be in a slightly different setting, and we'll see. I'm just kicking around ideas at the moment, but I think the good thing, Hank, about writing in the genre that I write in is that you are never short of material. Because the older
Right.
you get, the situations you go through, the situations your friends and your family go through, is always throwing up ideas or scenarios that you think, yeah, I can have some fun with that, or I can run with that, or I can examine that to a certain level. And again, I think also that as a writer, I certainly need variety. I like to write a different book after the book I've just written. Otherwise, we as writers, as you spend a year, if not more, locked in a small room with these characters in this space and with them in your head. And I think I might go mad if I had to just, repeat the same thing again and again and again. So I've actually just finished and just submitted to my agent what is hopefully book number 15, which is completely different to this. But the interesting thing is, having spent a bit of time plotting out today, I'm very excited to get back to Doug, because I think he certainly has a lot more mileage as a character, and I'd be interesting to see where where his pulling on the leash takes me. Actually,
I think that's fantastic. Matt, one thing I like to ask authors that have amassed a great back catalog is, over the course of writing 14 books, has your creative process changed? Have you figured out things that work better for you? Does the process become more streamlined as you get deeper into your career?
I would love to say yes, Hank. I would love to say yes, but I've worked this differently on many different books. I know there's the big question about, are you a plotter or a pantser? I've tried both approaches. I wouldn't necessarily say either one works better or worse. I've probably had one book out of the 15 that I've now written that has flown relatively easily. It's the best job in the world, but sometimes it can be a very hard job to get right. And I think the pressure from my point of view, the more that I write, the more novels that I write, the pressure that I feel for each one, where I think I've come up with a good idea and I don't feel I've delivered on it, to its potential, is the bad thing about it. I love the process. I absolutely adore the fact that I get to sit down every day and make up stories for a living. I love editing. I think I'm in the rarity where, for me, the first draft is like pulling teeth. But once I've got that 70 or so thousand words down, I adore going back to it and shaping it and cutting and adding. And I love the way that if I'm being a bit more fluid in terms of a lack of frothing, then that surprises me as much as hopefully it surprises the reader, and I really enjoy seeing what that throws up. As to whether I'm better at it 15 books down the line, I wouldn't like to tell you. If I'd have had the same editor for 15 years, they might have been able to answer that. But no, it's still good fun. It's still hard work. It's still the best job in the world. I just hope I'm still aiming for that high fidelity level of book one day, and maybe it'll come.
Well, the joy that you experience in writing absolutely translates to the page, and what a joy it is to read. Pug Actually is available everywhere now. When you're hearing this, you can grab it in physical form if you want to turn the paper pages, or Kindle edition if you prefer to read on your Kindle. Matt, is this going to be an audiobook as well?
I believe so, yes. I think that should be available on the 29th too. So yeah, you can have Doug serenade you as much as you'd like.
Fantastic. Pug Actually available everywhere now. Go grab it. Matt, this has been so much fun chatting. Thank you for taking time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast. Thank you.
Authors, if you're looking for a partner to help ensure that your book is the best it can possibly be, look no further than Pico's House. Crystal and her staff make a conscious effort to be critical yet courteous. They also strive to make the business side of things run smoothly so that you can rest easy knowing that your manuscript is in capable hands. Whether you need beta reading, developmental editing, a manuscript critique, line editing, copy editing, or proofreading, Pico's House is the one-stop shop for you. Check them out today at picoshouse.com to get started.